Welcome to the new edition of the ABBA League magazine. In the 25th round, Krka and Solnock were fighting for the European places, as was Metalac in their home game against Megalex. The derby game of the round was held in Zagreb, where Cedevita was determined to beat Budućnost in the fight for second place. MZT hosted Cibona in Skopje. And as always, we'll conclude the show by presenting you with the best 5 actions of the round. We start with the news. The only and big one of the week is, of course, James Florence demonstratively leaving Zadar after not being paid for months. The American continues his career in Turkey. His legacy in the ABBA League was 15.3 points per game, and with that score he was the league's 4th best scorer. Let's go to Novo Mesto now. Krka had never lost to Solnock in front of their fans, and the Slovenian champion was keen to keep in touch with that tradition, as both teams were still going for the 6th place. The visitors were quick to start firing from distance as David Vojvoda opened the match with a 3. Chris Booker at the other end got the home team going. But it was Solnock with a much better opening to the game, as when Jones scored for the second time, it was to give his team the lead of 12-2. When a bit later David Vojvoda struck twice, the visitors were already 13 points to the good, and it was only then Krka's coach Aleksandar Džikić deployed his best player, Malcolm Armstead. The move paid off, as Armstead was the main force behind Krka, quickly closing the gap to 6 points. The home team was still trailing the guests after the first 10 minutes, but only by 4 points, as Armstead managed to score for 3. Soon in the second quarter, the home team first caught up with the visitors and then went ahead when Miralem Halilovic scored his first points for his new club. Krka had a lead of 6 points when Alexis Van Gemene scored 2.5 minutes before the end of the half, but it was immediately cut to 4 points as Michael Lee was successful at the other end. That was a very nice dunk as well. Teams were only separated by a point when the second quarter ended. Solnock was the first team to lead in the second half after Miljan Rakic had scored another 3, but Krka would soon reclaim it and was in front by 4 when Matej Rojc scored. The Hungarians responded by hitting twice from distance to level the score to 46. David Vojvoda eventually ending the match with 23 points to his name. But the home team was also hitting threes, and when Armstead scored his 3rd, it was to open up a 4-point cushion for his team. But the visitors cut it to 2 before entering the decisive period of the match. Again, Solnock took the first lead of the quarter, courtesy of Gergely Somogi. And 5 minutes before the end, Chris Booker leveled the score to 61, and a close finish to the game was expected, but as it turned out, Krka wouldn't score a single point till the end of the match, so of course no problems for the visitors, who were ready to take what was offered and cruise to a 10-point victory in the end, which was their first in Novo Mesto anyway. 3-point shooting proved to be decisive, as the visitors managed to score twice as many as the hosts. Levski had won for only the second time this season prior to this encounter with Union Olimpia, and there was a possible air of optimism in Bulgaria of maybe snatching another one in the closing stage of the season. But as the events unfolded, it proved to be anything but for the hosts, as highly motivated Olimpia was far too good to allow any kind of surprise. They did score first, but then the next 10 points were scored by the visitors. And it was a run concluded by Alen Omic with his 6th point already in the first period. A bit later it was 14-4, as it seemed only Alen Omic was doing all the scoring. He scored 10 points already in the first period, which ended with Olimpia in front by 18, and Levski only scoring 6 in the first 10 minutes. No real change in the second period as Gregor Hrovat rounded up a 14-0 run for the green and white, after which they held the lead of 32-6. The gap was already 26 points after Markovic scored 7 in a row. Levski had only scored 3 times in the entire period, and Olympia held a commanding lead come the end of the first half, which ended with 41-16. No real surprise then. The first thing that happened after the interval was Olympia open up a 30-point cushion. But then Levski regrouped a little bit, and when they scored for 3 for the first time in the game, the gap was 26. That was only after this action, which was concluded nicely by Klemen Prepelic. And this is the action. A first hit from distance for the home team. Again, it did not make much difference as Olympia scored the next 7 points, and it was again 32 points to the good after Rupnik's points. Levski's chances of a win were practically zero before the teams entered the last quarter, as they were trailing the guests by 28 points after 30 minutes. And when Pavel Ivanov scored twice from distance at the beginning of the last period, Memi Bečirović took his first and only timeout of the game. The game was of course over for some time now, and it wasn't a real surprise when Olympia took their foot off the gas a little bit. Some of the younger players got their chance as well, but there was never really any doubt who was going to win in the end, which Olympia did comfortably. And by this win, it guarantees themselves 5th place after the regular season, which was of course one of the objectives of the team from Ljubljana. Metalac was aiming for 6th place in the home game against Megalex, who had no such ambitions anymore as they had 2 wins less than the hosts. George Majstorovic returned to the lineup after being absent through injury, though Jahi Carson was missing for the home team. Nikola Jokic was the first player to score in this one, while at the other end it was Nikola Jeftovic who dunked to get the home team going. Megalex was in front by 6-3 when Nenad Miljanovic scored, and then the teams were level on 12 points when Marko Ljubicic rounded up a run of 5 straight points for Metalac. The home team was in front for the first time when Majstorovic scored and was fouled as well. Metalac then had a 4-point advantage after the first 10 minutes when Nemanja Protic made it 22-18. Soon in the second quarter, Metalac opened up a 7-point lead when Marko Jošilo scored for 3, and soon after that the home team was in front by 10 for the first time when Protic scored 5 in a row. Then it was Dan Musli's turn to score 5 to close the gap slightly, and then Miljanovic scored twice in a row, and it was to reduce the deficit to 6 points, and that was also the margin come the end of the first half. Marko Jošilo was playing well that evening as he got to his personal best in the end with 17 points as he put his team 9 in front. Then Miljanovic scored twice to close the gap to 5 points again. The lead was soon back to 10 points when Nikola Malešević scored from the counter-attack. The teams were separated by 8 points before entering the last period when Musli was the last player to score in the third period. When Jokic scored twice at the beginning of the last quarter, he had reduced the deficit to 5 points, but the lead was back to 9 when Jeftovic stole the ball from Kešel and scored from the counter. Some 4 minutes before the end of the game, Mega finally managed to score for free from their 18th attempt as Jaramas closed the gap to 7. Less than 2 minutes before time, Mega had closed it further to just 3 points when Jaramas this time drove to the basket. Nikola Jokic then scored and drew a foul as well as he made sure the teams were only separated by 2 points with just a minute remaining on the clock. The visitors were trailing Metalac by just a point 42 seconds before time and had a chance to take the lead, but Kešel missed an open shot for 3. When Nikola Jeftovic scored both times from the free throw line, Metalac was 3 points to the good with just 8 seconds remaining. And then Milinovic had a chance to score for 3 and take the game into overtime, but had missed, and Metalac was able to edge this one and stay in play for European places. A big basketball holiday took place in Laktashi, where Igokea hosted Crvena Zvezda, with both teams, of course, at different ends of the table prior to this game. Marcus Williams was the first player to score in this game, and at the other end, it was one of Igokea's best players, Duško Bunic. He ended the game with 13 points and 7 rebounds. Igokea was in front by 6 points when Brady Heslip scored his first points of the night, and that got immediately reduced to 4 when Jaka Blažić scored for the visitors. Then the home team played better and were already in front by 13 when Marko Čakarević scored for 3. That said, Zvezda did reduce the deficit to 7 points till the end of the first quarter when Nemanja Dangubić made it 25-18. Zvezda started the second period well by scoring the first 5 points, and after Dangubić was successful from distance, the gap was just 2. It prompted Igokea to react, and when Branko Jorović scored and drew a foul as well, the home team was back to a double-digit lead. But then the visitors scored 3 times for 3, and when Blažić scored 5 in a row, he had reduced the deficit to just 3 points, and that was also the margin come the end of the first half. Right after the interval, Luka Mitrovic scored to close the gap to just a point, but Igokea had the answer through Brady Heslip and was soon back to a 6-point lead. Didn't last long though, as Zvezda soon leveled the score to 53 when Mitrovic was successful again, and then it was time for Jonathan Jones to play well, and when he started scoring, Igokea was back to a 6-point lead. Then Heslip scored for 3, and the home team was in front by 11 and then by 9 after 30 minutes of play, as Charles Jenkins made it 71-62. When Jorović scored from distance, Igokea had a 12-point lead at the start of the last quarter, but that prompted a response from the leading team of the league, and by the time Tsirbes found his way under the basket, the lead was reduced to 5. Some 3 minutes before the end of the game, Nikola Kalinic made sure Zvezda was only trailing the host by a point, and after that Jaka Blažić secured the first lead after the opening of the match. Mike Tsirbes was then the decisive factor in the last minute, as he scored 6 consecutive points to give Crvena Zvezda their 23rd win of the season, after they had won the last quarter by as much as 23-9. 7,000 people turned up in the Pioneer Hall to see the game between Partizan and Zadar, who was forced to play without their best scorer, James Florence, who had left the club just prior to this encounter. Partizan's newest acquisition, Josh Akonyon, was the first player to score and was eventually their best scorer of the game with 16 points to his name. Josip Sobin got things going for the visitors, and then Akonyon was still firing on all cylinders as he made it 13-9. Zadar then closed the period better and had actually won it by 20-15 after scoring 9 unanswered points. Then the visitors were in front by 7 points when Filip Kraljevic was successful, but that prompted Partizan to react as they managed to score the next 14 points to take the lead of 33-26 through Boris Dalo. The home team, Edo Muric, then set the result after the first 20 minutes. It was 36-28. The home team was quick to take a 15-point lead after the interval, courtesy of their captain, Dragan Milosavljevic, and the lead grew to 18 when Milan Mačvan scored from distance. The gap was reduced to 13 when Franco Shango scored his second three-pointer, but Partizan finished the period on a high as they managed to open up a 20-point lead before entering the last and decisive 10 minutes of the game. And then in the last period, Zadar completely fell apart as Partizan was already 31 points to the good when Marinkovic scored from distance and rounded up a run of 18 unanswered points It took more than 4 minutes for Zadar to score in the last period, when Shirko then broke the deadlock and made it 70-41. The lead was 32 when Božo Djumic scored twice in a row, and of course there was no doubt about the winner of this one. The rest of the game was a mere formality, and eventually it finished with 87-53. No real trouble for the black and white from Belgrade, who now win for the 12th time in a row, which is of course a great turnaround from the beginning of the season. The derby game of the 25th round was scheduled in Zagreb, as Cedevita and Budućnost were trying to make their position as good as it can be before the playoffs, as everybody wants to avoid meeting Crvena Zvezda in the semi-final. No Mario Delaš or Stanko Barac for Cedevita in this one, as they took the first lead of the game through Marko Arapovic, and for the visitors it was Suat Čehović. First with a 2-pointer, and then a bit later also scored for 3 and made it 6-5. Cedevita was in front by 4 when Ivan Ramljak scored his second 3, but the teams were close throughout the first period, and when Ivanovic scored his first points, it was to level the score to 17. The visitors were 3 points in front after the first 10 minutes, when Reynolds rounded up a run of 7-0 for them. Cedevita started the second period better and was able to put together a run of 9 unanswered points, after which they were 6 points in front. And when Fran Pilepic scored from distance, the lead was 7 points. But soon after that, they managed to open up a double-digit lead for the first time when Miro Bilan made it 36-24. After hitting twice from distance, Budućnost managed to close the gap to 8. But Cedevita had a strong finish to the half, and when Carlos Ganec was the last player to score in it, it was to give his team the lead of 12 before entering in the second half. After the interval, the gap was 14 points when Ivan Ramljak scored, and then the visitors answered by scoring twice from distance to close the gap to 8 points. The last one courtesy of Bojan Subotic. The gap was further reduced to 6 when Savovic scored 8 in a row, but in the remaining time of the third period, Carlos Ganec scored twice, and the teams were separated by 8 points before entering the last 10 minutes of the game. Budućnost struck first in the last period by scoring 2 consecutive 3-pointers, and the lead was cut to just 3 points. Less than 4 minutes before time, Nemanja Gordic found Miro Bilan nicely, and the two combined to give Cedevita a 10-point lead back. And there was some hope left for the visitors when Omar Cook scored his first 3 less than 2 minutes before time, but the decisive action of the game would be Cedevita's, as Miro Bilan found Tomislav Zupčić, and the lead was back to 8. 53 seconds before time, all doubts were cast away as Nemanja Gordic made it 77-65. And the game ended with 80-70, which is an identical result as from the first game in Podgorica. MZT and Cibona had 2 of the longest losing streaks before meeting in Skopje, as MZT suffered 7 straight defeats and Cibona 1 more. The guests took the first lead of 4-0 through Marin Rozic, and for the home team it was Aleksandar Čapin who opened the scoring in only his second game for his new club. When Suat Čehović scored his first 3, MZT was in front by 5-4, and then the gap was still just a point when Ante Žižić scored his first points of the game. Still, MZT was able to win the first period by 7 points, with Predrag Samardžijski being the last player to score in it. MZT had an 8-point advantage when Uroš Lučić scored his first 3. And then Cibona suffered a blow as Dominic Maura picked up an injury of an already depleted club and wasn't able to continue the game. It was big problems for Cibona. And then it was Cvetkovic's turn to score for 3, and the home team was in front by 9, which was pegged back to 6 as Cibona was able to score from distance. Vlado Ilievski managing that in their 5th attempt. But Lucic was playing well in this period, had scored 7 points in that time to secure a first double-digit lead for the home team. And the teams were separated by 11 points after the first 20 minutes. Cibona was soon only 3 points behind in the third quarter after Rosic's points, but MZT was soon back to an 11-point lead when Simonovski scored twice from distance. The lead was 9 points after 30 minutes of play. Ivica Zubac scored 3 times in a row at the start of the last period to close the gap to 7 points, but again MZT responded in time, and after Simonovski was again successful from distance, he had secured their highest lead of 14 points. Some 4 minutes before time, Marko Jagodic-Kuriđa scored to close the gap to 10 points and gave Cibona some kind of chance in the finish of the match, but eventually it wasn't to be for the defending champion, as Uroš Lucic made sure the lead was put back to 15 and the game was decided. It ended with 78-65, and finally MZT is able to win a game, and also a first one for Aleš Pipan and his new club. Well, let's take a look at the results. Solnok surprises Krka in Novo Mesto, while Olimpija was a decisive winner in Sofia. An important win for Metalac in Valjevo, while Crvena Zvezda wins in Laktaši after a close battle. No problem for Partizan over Zadar, and Cedevita wins an important duel with Budućnost, which will have repercussions in the final standings of the first 4. The big news of the table is, of course, Partizan catches Budućnost in 2nd place and Olimpija secures final 5th with a win in Sofia. Metalac and Krka will fight it out for 6th, while the rest of the places are more or less decided. Levski, of course, is out for the next season. And now let's take a look who is our most valuable player of the 25th round, and it's again Megalix's Nenad Miljenovic. He played 35 minutes in the loss against Metalac and was able to contribute 20 points, 6 rebounds and as many as 12 assists. He also drew 9 fouls in that game, which wasn't enough to win it in the end, but he is our most valuable player of the week. Now it's time for the 5 best actions of the 25th round, and as always we'll start at number 5. It is from the game between Levski and Olimpija. There's the Bulgarian, but at the other end Hristo Nikolo capping up this nice action from the team from Ljubljana. Number 4. We have a lot of dunking. Again, of course, this time is Mike Cidbes after a nice pass from Stefan Jovic. Number 3, it's this stolen ball from Mihajlo Andrić, and then Dragan Milosavljević, sorry, and of course he made sure it was an attractive finish as well. Number 2, we go to Zagreb. A nice combined action, a pass by Miro Bilan and a dunk from Tomislav Zupčić. Capping up a nice combined action from Cedevita. And number 1, the best action of the round. It is this dunk by Michael Lee, who was trying to correct a missed shot for 3. It was very athletic, very attractive, and it is our number 1 action of the 25th round. So the last round will give us final answers regarding European places and playoff opponents. We start on Saturday with a Slovenian derby in Ljubljana, and the last round of the regular season will end on Monday with a match between Crvena Zvezda and MZT, which will of course bear no real significance. And that is all for today. Thank you for joining us. Do it again next time, which will be in a week. Until then, it's bye-bye from us.